Welcome to this deep dive. We're tackling something pretty enticing today. This idea of leaving the workforce really early, maybe even by age 40. It sounds almost like a fantasy, doesn't it? Well, we looked at an article from India today titled Planning to Retire at 40. Here's what it really takes.
And it dives right into this. It suggests, well, it is possible, but maybe not in the way most people think about retirement. So let's unpack what this source reveals about the reality behind that dream.
Yeah, it's interesting how the article pivots really quickly from, the attractive idea to the sheer difficulty.
Yeah.
It makes it clear this isn't some casual ambition. It demands, huge discipline and a really meticulous strategy, pretty much from day one.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that. The article cuts straight to the chase. What does it say are the absolute, foundational requirements if you even want to think about retiring that early? Fundamentally, it highlights two main things, core pillars, as it calls them. First, saving a massive chunk of your income. We're talking 50%, maybe even up to 70%. And second, investing that saved money effectively. This isn't just, skipping a few luxuries. The article implies it's a total overhaul of how you live and spend. Saving has to be the top priority.
Wow, 50 to 70%. That's a serious number. But what does that actually mean in terms of the total pot you need? The article gives some figures, right?
It does, and they are pretty striking figures. To be properly financially independent by 40, it suggests needing, somewhere between 35 and maybe 79 times what you spend each year.
Hold on, 35 to 79 times. That's a huge spread. What makes the difference? Why such a big range?
Right, that's a key point the article brings up. It depends heavily on things people often gloss over. Crucially, your assumed safe withdrawal rate, so the percentage you plan to live off from your savings each year. And also, how much flexibility you expect in your lifestyle later on. If you plan to take out a higher percentage each year or, say, travel a lot more, that pushes you towards needing that much larger amount, the 79 times figure. It makes achieving that significant savings target even tougher. It's like building a financial fortress, the article says. It needs to be really solid.
Okay, so you build this fortress, but it's easy to get carried away with just the saving part. The article also flags some common mistakes, right? Traps people fall into.
Yes, absolutely crucial. It warns that many people just underestimate what things will cost down the line, especially as you get older, Needs change. And maybe more critically, they overestimate the income their investments will actually throw off consistently. Passive income isn't always as passive or predictable as hoped.
And what about those bigger sort of external factors?
Exactly. The article really emphasizes two big ones that can seriously undermine your savings if ignored. First, healthcare costs, which tend to rise significantly. And second, the relentless effect of inflation. It just quietly eats away at your purchasing power over decades. It's like building that fortress on sand if you don't account for the rising tide of costs. Needs very careful planning.
The article also mentions the FIRE movement. That's financial independence, retire early. So connecting all these points, what does it suggest about actually applying these FIRE ideas, especially considering those potential economic headwinds like inflation?
Well, the core FIRE principles save a lot, invest well, reduce expenses. They're pretty universal. But the article, coming from an Indian perspective, subtly points out that applying them needs local context, especially, in places perhaps facing higher inflation or more market volatility. It suggests being even more conservative with your withdrawal rate becomes really critical. You can't just blindly follow, say, a standard 4% rule developed elsewhere. You have to adapt your strategy.
Okay, right. You need to tailor it specifically to where you are and the conditions there.
Precisely. Paying close attention to the local economic environment, cost of living projections, market specifics.
So wrapping this up then, retiring at 40. It's not impossible, clearly not a fantasy, according to the source. But it sounds like a real financial marathon, needing just constant commitment.
That sums it up well. It means making some genuinely hard choices about spending versus saving, pushing to maximize what you earn, and being incredibly disciplined as an investor over a long period.
It's about designing your life around achieving that freedom, earned through some really rigorous strategic planning. So for you listening, if you are dreaming about getting out of the traditional work routine early, maybe take these points seriously. The article really pushes you to start now. Look hard at your spending, find ways to significantly boost savings, and get strategic about investing. It's definitely a tough road, no doubt about it. But for those who really commit, the article frames the reward, the financial freedom by 40, as potentially life-changing. Not just freedom, but a whole new way of living. We want to thank India Today for their article, Planning to Retire at 40. Here's what it really takes, which sparked this discussion. Until our next deep dive, Keep thinking, keep planning, and keep exploring what's possible.